So with that said, then what's the difference between is the difference a difference between a story that we read in a book versus what we would class in this conversation as a sales story?
So let me answer that a couple of different ways. First of all, there's a big difference between a sales story and a sales pitch. And you need both of them, obviously, right? So in fact, you probably need more sales pitches than you need, or you're going to deliver more sales pitches maybe than sales stories. But there's a big difference between a sales pitch and a sales story. A sales pitch is, here are the reasons why you should buy what I'm selling, right? So basically, a sales pitch is a list. It's a list of very logical, rational reasons to buy something that you're selling, right? So it's speaking to the left logical thinking part of the brain. And you absolutely have to have that if you're in sales. A sales story speaks to the other more intuitive, emotional part of the brain because it's an actual story. It's not a list of reasons to buy something. It's a story that contains a lesson about why you should buy something, but without it being delivered in a list. It's being delivered in the form of a narrative about something that happened to someone. So I think the question you actually asked was, is there a difference between a sales story and a story that you might read in a book? And the answer is a little bit. There's a little bit of a difference, but not much. There's a huge difference between a sales pitch and a sales story. There's not much difference between a sales story and a story you'd read in a book. One of the differences is a sales story is probably going to be a lot shorter than a story you read in a book, right? Or a movie that you watch. A movie is a story, right? But it's 2 hours long. A sales story is 2 minutes long, all right? A story you might read in a book, it might be 250 pages, or it might be a chapter, or it might be 5 or 6 pages, whereas again, a sales story is going to be 2 minutes. But the sales story and the story from the book or the movie, they're going to have a lot in common. They're going to have both of those types will have the basic 6 elements of a story, which is there'll be where and a when. So that's two of them. A where, a when. There'll be a main character. That main character has some goal or objective they're trying to accomplish. There's a villain or an obstacle getting in the way of them accomplishing that. There are events that transpire along the way and hopefully resolve themselves nicely in either a success or a failure at the end. So both those types of stories, sales stories and stories in a book, will have all of those same characteristics. Now, the sales story will have some additional things that the entertainment story won't. Like there'll be a lesson at the end of it. There'll be a recommended action. And the topic of it will be convincing you to buy something as opposed to merely be entertained. But other than that, they're largely the same.
To make this real for the audience, can you just share a 2-minute sales story from yourself or a client, perhaps?
Yeah. So a couple of years ago, my wife and I were at an art fair looking for a picture for our son's bathroom at home upstairs. And we were going booth to booth to booth and got to this one booth of this guy named Chris Guglielmello. Look this guy up. He's fabulous. He takes these mesmerizing underwater pictures of sea anemones and coral reefs and sharks and everything. Anyway, she's flipping through his pictures and she just gets emotionally attached to this one picture that to me looked about as out of place as a pig in the ocean, because it literally was a picture of a pig in the ocean. Okay. And so of course I had to ask the guy, dude, what's up? Pigs don't swim. Well, like, why do you have a picture of a pig in the ocean? And that's when the magic started. He said, yeah, that was the craziest thing. He said that picture was taken in the Bahamas off the coast of this uninhabited island called Big Major Cay. And he said, apparently what happened was a few years ago, some local entrepreneur decided to raise a pig farm for bacon, I guess. And anyway, he found out there was this island that was uninhabited where he could keep the pigs for free. Well, he's no dummy, so he's going to keep them on the free island, right? So anyway, he said, but if you look in the picture, look up behind the pig, up there on the beach. What kind of vegetation do you see up there? And I kind of squinted and said, well, the only thing I recognize up there is cactus. And he said, right. That's a problem. Pigs don't like cactus. Okay, so literally there was nothing on the island for these pigs to eat. So the entrepreneur wasn't very smart after all. Well, anyway, he got lucky, and so did the pigs, in that a local restaurant owner on a neighboring island was boating his kitchen refuse, over the kitchen scraps, literally over to Big Major Cay every night and dumping them overboard just offshore, a couple of dozen yards offshore, just to get rid of the scraps, right? Well, if you're hungry enough, you'll do anything, right? So these pigs are like starving, but they can smell and see this food floating out in the ocean. Well, if you're hungry enough, like I said, you'll do anything. So eventually one little pig braved the waters and dog paddled or pig paddled his way out there to get the food. And then it's two little pigs and then three little pigs. And, and anyway, here it's been a couple of generations later, and all the pigs on Big Major K can swim. And he said, in fact, they don't even call it Big Major K anymore. Everybody calls it Pig Island now, and all the tourists go see it because you can swim at the pigs and it's fun. But anyway, he said, so when I boated over there to take pictures, like the pigs literally swam up to my boat, right? Because they thought I was the guy from the restaurant, right? He said, I didn't even have to get out of my boat. Like, normally I have to, put my scuba equipment on and go in the water and wait for hours for something interesting to happen. He said, all I did is lean over the side of the boat with my camera. Boom. Easiest picture I ever took, and one of my best sellers, right? So of course, at that point, I'm like, we'll take it, right? So I pay the guy, and we're out of there. Now, I don't know if you timed that, but 2 or 3 minutes ago, before I'd heard that story, that was just a silly picture that I had no interest in buying. But after hearing the story, I had to have it, right? Because now I wasn't just buying a picture, I was buying a picture that had an interesting story attached to it. Or maybe I was buying an interesting story that had a picture attached to it. Right. And if you come to my house, and you go to the bathroom, you're going to hear that story again because I'm going to tell it to you again. Right. Because I love telling that story. Right. And so the story made that picture so much more valuable to me than just it being a silly picture of a pig in the ocean.
Is this, I feel like clearly you're onto something, successful multiple books on this subject, but is this something that is a lost art in adding context to something that is utilitarian? And I'm thinking about software, for example. If we're selling software, it does X, Y, Z. I don't really care if it works in the background. But you buy, this is massively cliche, but if you buy a Apple product, you get all the prestige and the street cred and everything that goes along with it. Is that something that's perhaps lacking in B2B sales specifically, that ability to add context to something that's relatively mundane?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, in fact, just imagine how that artist would have sold me that picture if he'd done it the traditional sales way. He would have said something like this. He'd have said, look, Paul, there's 3 reasons why you should buy this picture. First of all, it's the right size to fit on the wall in the bathroom where your wife wants it to go. Second of all, it's the right color palette to match the decor in your bathroom. Your wife showed me the picture of the bathrooms, and this matches, quite nicely. And thirdly, it's in the right price range that you've already told me you're willing to pay to spend on this piece of art, right? And those would have been 3 very rational and logical reasons to buy that picture. But those same 3 reasons were probably true of dozens of pictures all over that art fair, right? But that was the only picture that had an interesting story attached to it, and that's why it's the one hanging in the bathroom upstairs and the others are not. So that's the difference. That's how we normally would sell something, right?
Sure. And I don't want to remove too much of the magic here, but Paul, how many times have you told that story?
Oh, countless by now, I'm sure. Dozens,
because you told it, and it was you. There's obviously how you tell the story, your ability to story tell in real time has an effect on this as well, right? Because I was captivated, but you probably could have told me, if I would have told that story, perhaps it might not have been as captivating as you did it. So clearly, I'm making the assumption here. These things that we need to rehearse, right? We need to practice, and there is a skill to delivering them as well.
Yeah, there is. So clearly, practice, makes perfect. But I tell my clients the story is more important than the delivery, all right? Because some of these stories you're going to tell over and over and over again in lots of sales calls, and you're going to get really, really good at them. Some of the stories you're only going to tell a handful of times, or maybe once, because there's a unique situation that happens, and you decide, oh, I need to tell them a story about this thing that happened to me one time, and that situation just never comes up again. So you need to be comfortable with and have a repertoire of stories to tell, even if you don't tell them a lot. And I'm convinced that the delivery is not nearly as important as the story. So just imagine, I've now tried to sell you this picture twice now, right? I've told you a pig story, and I've given you the 3 reasons why, right?
Yeah.
Now, imagine I told you that pig story, but I didn't tell it with as excited of a tone of voice, and maybe I stuttered and stammered a little bit, and maybe I kind of butchered the ending. But then I caught up, and maybe my eye contact wasn't that great, and maybe I fidgeted funny with my hands, and I made all the rookie mistakes with delivery of any speech or story, right? I think it still would have worked, and the reason is that you're not a professional. Well, you might be, and I am a professional speaker, right? Most of us are not, though, right? You might be a salesperson, but you're not, You don't spend your time on stage. You're not a Hollywood actor. You're not a Broadway actor. Nobody's expecting perfection in your delivery, right? So if you deliver the wrong story, but you deliver it in a way that would make a Shakespearean actor proud, your audience will never forgive you for wasting their time. But if you deliver the right story that's helpful to them and helps them make a decision, but you commit some of those little foibles that I talked about and you don't deliver it really great, but you get basically the main character and when and where it happened and what happened and how it ended and the lesson. If you get the basics right, but commit all those other delivery failures, your audience will forgive you because you've helped them. Right. So don't think of this as a performance art, like you're on stage. You're just having conversations with people, trying to help them make a good decision.